Kira, thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm very excited to hear about your story and hope to gain some knowledge from it and some insight on just mental health in general. To give you kind of an idea of why I did this, we talked a little bit about before the show, but it was also, you just mentioned to me about if people could take mental health a little more seriously. Mm-hmm. One of my biggest faults, just in general as a human, especially an adult human, was not recognizing that I was brushing things off because I didn't want to deal with it.
Yes.
And so I had built this armor up, that was a defense mechanism. Mm-hmm. And it was very easy for me to be dismissive or tell white lies about things. One of the big things I realized I was doing was procrastinating. And by procrastinating and using my traumas as excuses instead of lessons, mm-hmm. I wasn't making any progress. Mm-hmm. And so I was mature in a lot of ways, but emotional wasn't one of them. Mm-hmm. And it was a big thing for me because my biggest issue with that was my relationships, romantic ones. But then once I started on this like intentional living and mental journey, I realized it was affecting all of my relationships. And I was flying by the seat of my pants. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize how chaotic each day was until I started living purposefully, and how each relationship was affected by my inability to say those are my flaws and I accept them and I learn from them, versus excusing myself from a conversation or a reality check or being serious with someone by identifying it and getting rid of it. Mm-hmm. And so it was like just hanging on.
Totally.
So what have you found that's helpful in the realm of mental health, and do you practice it every day? Is it something that are you writing it out? Like what's your process?
Yeah, there's a lot that I've done and still do, but I do want to mention a lot of times men, especially, mm-hmm. Generations before us too, they did push it down. Like it was faux pas for men to have any emotions at all. Yeah. And now our generation, luckily, is starting to identify and express and share. And that's how you heal the wounds. That's how you heal generational trauma. Now, I have been through a lot of therapy. So I grew up in an alcoholic home. My parents divorced when I was 3. My dad remarried, had 2 other children. My mom remarried and did not. But even that alone, people are like, that, 50% of marriages, split up anyway. Like it is a trauma. Yeah. It's your foundation broken up, regardless of your age. And I'm not shaming my parents or saying they didn't do the best they could, but I'm saying it is what it is. So I need to acknowledge that and heal those wounds so that, I got married, and we can talk a little bit more about my story. When my late husband and I got married, we decided we wanted to create a really healthy life for our children. So we weren't going to repeat some of the patterns that our parents had done, right? So I have been in therapy since I had my first daughter. She turned 7 tomorrow. Okay. I had really bad postpartum anxiety and didn't really know what was going on, and wasn't officially diagnosed till, a few months after having her. And mind you, my mom passed away 10 years ago, so I didn't have my mother or my stepmother. She, God love her, not a real big baby person, mm-hmm. Okay? So, and my late husband's parents were not there. So I was doing this by myself, and I went from being an achiever, right? I was in medical sales for 10 years, on the top, winning awards. I was about to open a business when I met my husband. We ended up getting engaged. I gave that up. And all of a sudden I found myself, I was in California, back home to open a business in Nebraska. And I found myself in St. Louis, married, pregnant right away, just bought a house, left my career. And I was just like, what just happened to me? Yeah. So I had to do some sort of, looking inside to, think about who am I? What am I doing? And I became a wife and a mother like that. Okay, so that's when I started seeing a therapist.
So you didn't have any space to process any of this?
No.
Or anywhere to take it?
No.
You were just thrust into the situation.
Correct. And then my postpartum anxiety was so bad, I had to see a therapist because I'm like, well, I cannot feel this way. You're not supposed to feel this way.
Yeah.
And a lot of women suffer from postpartum, whether it be depression, anxiety, psychosis. It's your hormones. It's the lack of support that women have, families have today. You know, back in the day, we all used to live close near our families, right? And it was like
Right.
the village. And all of us moms that are here without family were like, hey, village, where are you? Like, are you coming? When? And it's just not...
Yeah, people would stop by.
Correct. And drop off food and like
Right.
hold the baby. And that just didn't happen.
Now neighbors move in and out, and you never even know it.
Correct. In some neighborhoods, like mine now is very much a cohesive neighborhood. Totally a blessing. But, you know, at the time, there weren't as many young families there. So after we had our first daughter, when she was 8 months old, I was just coming out of postpartum anxiety, seeing my therapist, of course, starting to feel better. We were asked to move to Toronto, Ontario, with my husband's job. So I'm thinking, are you flipping kidding me? Like everything in my life has taken a total, complete turnaround. And now you want me to go to Toronto, Ontario? Where is Toronto, Ontario?
And what language do they speak?
And what language do they speak?
Right.
But of course, my husband's like, it's going to be great for the job, long term. And so I'm like looking up, I'm like, maple leaves. What is this? We end up moving up there.
Mm-hmm.
Complete blessing. I eventually said, at first I was like, I'm not going. Like, I literally just now feel like I have my feet under me. I know what it's like being a mom. I'm still trying to figure out what it's like to be a wife and not work full time and not be achieving stuff every day and meeting quotas.
So 8 years into it.
Yeah. No, this was...
Oh, you're talking about in the past.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, got it.
Sorry, I'm giving you my whole life story. I told you I can really be long-winded.
This is what we want.
Okay.
This is how people learn.
Okay. So, again, still seeing my therapist. I saw her the whole time. We did virtual when I moved to Toronto. So we were there a year. I got pregnant with my second daughter 3 months after we moved up there. It was a surprise, although nowadays when people say it's a surprise, it's like, but really, is it a surprise? Like, we know how babies are made.
Right,
you know what I mean? But, like, we weren't, like, planning on it.
Probability states.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, anywho, I get pregnant with my second up there. We have a blast. Toronto is amazing. It's super diverse. Like, it's a melting pot. They have amazing food. It's like the arts. It's phenomenal. So we're up there a full year. Mm-hmm. And then they asked Kyle, my late husband, to come back down and work back in St. Louis. So we moved back, had my second child. She just turned 5, like 9 days ago.
So the first transition and the second transition were both during pregnancy.
Married, pregnant right away.
Right.
Bought a house. Then Cora, my oldest, was 8 months old when they asked us to move to Toronto.
Okay.
Then we were in Toronto, got pregnant with Leah, came back here.
And had Leah here.
Had Leah here. When she was 9 months old, the day of the pandemic shutdown, we found out we were pregnant with our third child. Mm-hmm.
Irish twins?
No.
Is that what they call that?
No, because they're 17 months apart. If they were born in the same year, it's Irish twins.
Okay, got it.
So 5 months off of Irish twins.
Got it.
Which actually, fun fact about Leah, I know you said you're not a big cocky guy, but she was born...
Just to clarify, that's big hockey guy.
What did I say?
It ran together.
Oh, sorry.
It just sounded
hockey guy.
Like a big cocky guy.
Oh, cocky.
Like, no, I don't feel arrogant.
Hockey, not cocky.
Right.
I mean, I don't know you that well, so you could be cocky.
Right, both.
But she was born the day before they won the big cup, the Stanley Cup.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. And actually, one of the Blues players had a baby the day before I had my baby. So there was like Blues stuff everywhere.
Oh, okay.
It was super cool. Anyway, came back. Oh, yeah. Leah's 9 months old. Found out we were pregnant with our third the day of the pandemic shutdown.
Right.
So my husband is now at home. We actually had a fabulous 9 months with him at home because we were able to enjoy meals together. And because he traveled, he was a finance guy, he traveled, had dinners, and he was home with us. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So we have my son. My husband's elated. He's 3.5 now. We're just living life. We're like, all right, we can do this. Like, get our hands around things. That whole next year, the first year of my son's life, my husband wasn't really feeling well. Like, he had some stomach issues, and we're like, oh, it's just stress, whatever. His back hurts, but we're like picking up babies and toddlers, and so my son was, fast forward to 11 months old, and my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. So that was a big bomb that was dropped on our life. the reason like I am really, I've always been, since I had my child, so what, 7-8 years, my first child, I realized just how important it is. Okay. So luckily, because of everything that had happened in the past, I was seeing a therapist. Well, that therapist, gave me a whole bunch of tools, meditation, and a bunch of books, some other things to do and have, to keep calm, because parenting is not tough. I mean, not easy,
No, right,
super tough.
Right.
I was pretty much doing it alone. My husband worked full time. He was a great dad and did the best he could, but, he worked for a big finance corporation around here.
Yeah.
And there was a lot expected out of him. And we didn't have any support other than what we hired. So my husband got diagnosed stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And from there, it was just an awful hurricane. Just hurricane.
What, out of those tools, when did you have time to utilize those tools?
Great question. So I work out every day.
Yeah.
Almost no matter what, 6 out of 7 days. It's a priority. In fact, that's why I hired childcare to help. And that was the main reason. So I could get out of the house in the morning and breathe.
Yeah.
I also teach fitness. So I left the, sales industry and got into fitness while I was pregnant. I got a bunch of certifications, studied nutrition, started taking clients on one-on-one just because I needed an outlet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm an Enneagram 3, I'm an achiever, it's hard for me to just sit.
Right.
So working out is a huge piece for me.
Yeah.
I mean, you ask anybody in my family, it's like, all right, has Kira gone out for a run or not? Because she's like, a little testy. Also meditation.
Okay. So I've tried to start into meditation.
Okay.
I'm extremely ADD and ADHD.
Okay, both.
I don't know that they're different
Okay.
because
Okay, you just slap
I know
both.
I'm diagnosed with both.
Okay.
I was on Ritalin at age 5.
Uh-huh.
I stopped taking, then they did this before Adderall was even created. I stopped taking Adderall in high school because it made me real snippy. And I have a theory that the increase in ADD is directly related to the increase in adult depression because
I'm sure.
you're giving me basically cocaine
Stimulants.
while
yeah.
I'm developing as a
Correct.
kid, right? And so very adamant about my first son who just turned 20 today. So birthdays are back to back.
Oh my gosh. Happy birthday to him.
Yeah. He's got a mustache and it's cute as can be. I just FaceTimed him this morning. He was all proud of his little stash. It's actually pretty impressive. It's not a Celic or anything, but it's nice. And so my second one, my oldest son is so calm, so chill. He brought kind of a calmness to the home. And when his mother and I separated, fast forward years later, I had a surprise, quote unquote, baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Tyson, my youngest, lives with me now full time. And so he's at mom's every other weekend, and in between he's with me. And so it was like one of those 90s buddies films where he's teaching me how to let loose and I'm teaching him how to, be more rigid. Except at the time and up until very recently, I would say just this year we started developing this, it was basically like a 9-year-old and a 40-year-old. So the household seemed like just 2 college dudes lived there. Because there was like darts everywhere. And there was structure.
Average of the two.
Right. Is where we met in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were like just a couple 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And we had structure in the sense that like there's a bedtime, there's a routine. We have before we go to bed. But we started adding that in. And when I started adding the exercise in, that's been imperative for me too, because that's my win. Mm-hmm. So no matter what else I do throughout that day, I've won that part. Mm-hmm. I beat my mind. Mm-hmm. And so what I do is when I wake up in the morning, for some reason, it kind of hits me different. Like some mornings I might feel like I really don't want to do sit-ups today. Or some mornings I might be like, I'm not doing push-ups. Like I'm not getting down there. I don't know why. Like I'll go grab dumbbells. Easy peasy.
Yeah, I get it.
So whatever I don't want to do most is what I do first. And then everything else is downhill, but uphill. It's easier.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's become a part of my day. And I've started trying to add in meditation because, as I talked about last time, my theory has become that my mind and my heart and my emotions, my soul, my body, everything is like my house. And where I came up with that was during this last stage of depression, I was like, no more. Like, no more will I do this. Because I've kind of roller coasted through that. Mm-hmm. And I found fleeting ways around it, or ways to run around it, talk my way out of it, charm my way out of it in different ways. But that was so fickle, and it wasn't long lasting. And so I was like, I need to make this the time that it stops. This is when it stops. And one of the things that was really depressing me is coming home to clutter. And so that's where this kind of all came from, right? It's like I cleaned, and then I had that space in my day each day. So like day 5, I'm wiping windows. Day 6, what do I do? So now it's like my grout's clean, and I have to do constant pickup because I have a 9-year-old, right? Obviously. So, but then I was like, okay, this is the purposeful part that I didn't realize. This is where I started building spaces in my day, and was like, holy cow, like I have way more time than I thought I did.
It's priorities, totally.
Yeah, and it's kind of like with relationships too, right? It's not that anybody's too busy for you. It's, are you a priority to them?
1,000%.
And so I started trying to do that. The meditation part is my efforts into, and I'm doing up to 15 minutes a day now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
When do you do it?
I do it typically right after my workout, because that's before I take my son to camp, and or when school starts again, it'll be before school. And so I turn everything off. I set my phone off and all that stuff. And I just sit for 15 minutes, and I didn't know what to do when I meditate. Like I was like, you see like movies and TV. So I'm like, am I supposed to like
Sit
crisscross
like,
applesauce and almond?
yeah. Yeah.
And so what I started doing is I started replaying the negative thoughts I've had over the previous day or week, or as far back as I can remember for that day. And I think of the positive outcomes of those. Or I think of disagreements that I have, and I think, what part of that disagreement could I have done differently? And so my meditation is more about like softening my heart and trying to be more positive. And one thing I've noticed really recently that's come out of this is that I had a big issue with like always wanting to have a quip or a comeback, or like be like, look at that dude in his overalls, or like just childish stuff. And I don't have any of that. Like when I get cut off, and I didn't realize it went away, it just kind of went away because my son said something to me, and I was like, what? No, we don't talk like that. And I was like, dude, like 3 weeks ago, I've been like, for sure, like he does look silly or whatever. And it's just been like just positivity, because the whole concept that I have is like, I want to be able to, just like my home, welcome anybody in at any time and have a comfortable, clean space for them to live in or be in.
Totally.
And I've also noticed that I've cut people out in a way that, like you were saying, when you had, a high achiever and you have these connections, that when you're in this space now as a mother of 3 and going through this, you may not have that where's my socializing at? One of my problems with socializing was that I needed to make everybody, because of my past traumas, I needed to make everybody my best friend, whether it was a gas station attendant or a server. And that's just not feasible. And then my emotions are reliant upon other people that don't think twice about me after I walk out of the room. And so it was really silly. So I still am very curious, because we didn't go over that part yet, but where's the time for that meditation? Because
that was the initial question.
Yeah.
I have like 1,000 things going off as you're talking right now.
Yeah, good. Write them out.
Okay. Well, I don't have a pen and paper, but where do I find time to meditate? So I started meditating before I go to bed.
Okay.
So I put in, I use the Insighter app. It's a really great app. There's like thousands of meditations. I mean, you name it, they've got it. And so,
Okay. When you say thousands of meditations,
like already recorded meditations, there's also live meditations. It's an app.
is it sound?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I put my earbuds in.
So it's like a frequency.
Yeah, it's a guided meditation.
Describe this to us. Because I guess it's somebody in the background like, now relax your thoughts.
Yes.
Breathe in, move your shoulders back.
Exactly.
That kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Relax your face. Relax your jaw. Yeah, I need a guided meditation
Okay.
most of the time. So I put my earbuds in. I also wear a mask to bed. So I put my mask on. I just lay in my bed and listen to this meditation, and it puts me to sleep.
Okay.
So it could be, I don't know, I'll put like a 30 or 45-minute meditation on, and I just listen to it until I fall asleep, because it just relaxes your mind and your body.
So that still counts, because I always thought of that as just
Yes,
like
it
trying
counts.
to fall asleep.
No, it counts.
Oh.
I also will do like in the middle of the day if like it's chaos, which by the way, it's almost always chaos at my house. Like
Yeah.
even coming here.
3 children under 10.
3 children under 7.
Yeah.
I had 3 kids in 3 years. It's aggressive.
It's 1 a year.
It's aggressive. So sometimes in the afternoon, I will like lock myself in my bathroom or something and like put one on and just for 10 minutes. And it just calms your nervous system.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, like you find yourself reacting differently, having a different composure, because our life is messy. It's chaotic for everybody, right? And we have all these things coming at us, and now with social media and, you know, all the news that we have access to and the things that we read and see, it's chaotic, right? So it's our job, you know, our body, our mind, it's a gift. So it's our job to take care of it. No one's going to do it for us. And so I remember Dan Rather, one of those news guys, wrote this book called 10% Happier or something. And it was about meditating. Do you remember that? It was like probably 15 years ago. And I remember driving. I'm in sales. I'm driving, trying to listen to it. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, I have numbers to...
I think that's where I heard about it. It was from sales training.
Yeah, probably.
'Cause I used to do sales training. And it was about like not increasing your overall performance by 100%, but increasing XYZ by 5%, 10%, whatever over day. And that adds up to
the
100, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you can incorporate meditation, I mean, even through my husband's nightmare of a, you know, battle with cancer, I still found time to meditate, and it helped me, I think, keep my sound mind some of the time. But yeah, it's my kids meditate.
Did you ever replace that, and you don't have to answer this, but was there ever like substance crutches that you had?
Great question. So I loved wine. Loved it. I lived in Northern California from 21 until the end of my 20s. All my clients were, you know, to-do people. So I learned how to drink essentially in Northern California, like amazing wine. I didn't have a problem, but I definitely enjoyed it. And once I started having kids, obviously I was pregnant and nursing forever.
Right.
But I actually completely walked away from alcohol shortly after my husband got diagnosed, because I found myself super anxious. Like, I would have a glass of wine, and then this was initially right when he got diagnosed. And this happened like twice. I, you know, was outside with, like, my girlfriends were coming over to support or whatever, and we were by the bonfire, and I like had too many glasses of wine, like maybe like 2 or 3. And the next like week, I was super anxious, like more than I typically was. And again, this is like a hurricane in my life going on.
Was it because you had that moment of escapism with the wine, and then you didn't have it afterwards?
Well, and it's a depressant.
Right.
So it was already, you know, obviously my whole life was blown up.
Right.
All my future, you know, and I truly didn't think my husband was going to die, but I knew it was going to be a really hard battle. So I walked away from it, and I haven't looked back since. And I would absolutely say my anxiety is down. Like, that did not help. Alcohol, no matter who you are, alcohol does not help your mental health.
Right.
It just doesn't.
Right. And it's even like a sign of weakness subconsciously. But I just read this recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like if you're in a business meeting, and even if the other individual orders a drink, when you order that drink, they think lesser of you subconsciously because you're using a crutch.
Interesting.
So I actually was really good or really bad at drinking in my 20s, depending on what side of the coin you're on. And so I went 5 years without any alcohol until I was 30. And now I have the occasional cocktail, but I too have kind of warded that off. I mean, I might have had 10 drinks in a month would be the most I probably had in the last 2 years, but still, like, it was something. But my crutches were things that I didn't realize were escapism. Food.
A lot of people use food to
Loved me
suppress
some eating.
emotions.
I don't smoke cigarettes or anything, but I would smoke these little Black and Milds all the time. Not all the time, but infrequently. And I figured out that it was when I was most like, what do I do with my brain right now? Like, oh, let's go do that because it'll take my mind off of it. But living in your own sobriety is the most difficult and most rewarding thing ever.
I think...
for me, it was.
Yeah, depending on where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it was easy for me to never, like, just stop. And, like, I just don't have interest. Not that I never will again, but I just don't have interest. Like,
right.
I'm a health and wellness coach. I have 3 beautiful children to raise. Like, it's just not... It doesn't help anything. I totally lost my train of thought.
You were talking about that. That's when you decided to stop drinking, is because you had gone to a point, and I asked about crutches with substance.
Crutches. So I ran a ton. In my 20s when I lived in California, I ran 4 marathons, over 70 half marathons, and a few triathlons.
For those of us, including myself, that don't know how far a marathon is that 13 miles? What is that? 'Cause I see
No,
stickers.
that's 26.2 miles.
Okay.
So it takes like 4 hours.
So the 13.1,
is a half
that's
marathon.
a sticker, that's a half marathon.
That is a sticker.
Our guest last week has run 17 half marathons.
At our age,
Yeah.
we should probably peel back from running. Cycling would be really good for our joints, and we should be lifting weights. If you're 40 or above, basically, we don't want to hear this, but your body like essentially starts to deteriorate.
I walk an hour a day.
Walking is amazing.
I lift because I
Very
love
good.
lifting. I can lift forever, and not in a way to be like, I can lift forever, bro. But like it just doesn't. It's very therapeutic for me.
Yeah.
But cycling. So I picked up biking about a month ago again.
A month ago. Okay, awesome.
And the first day I did it with my son, we were like off this beaten trail. We try and explore like different wildlife areas and get outside as much as possible. We went to this place in Shawnee National Forest called Snake Road.
Okay.
And so out of the entire state of Illinois, like 60% of the reptile and amphibian population is condensed in this one area. And so during certain times of the year, they shut down this road because there's snake and turtle migration. I got to see my first rattlesnake in the wild.
You are kidding me.
No, we loved it. And we got cave salamanders. We were up in this cave, like getting like salamanders, and that was fantastic. We found this sweet little honey hole of gar. So like a gar is like a long-nosed fish, like an alligator gar. I had never seen like 2 in the same place before, and this was like, I guess, a spawning area, this little stream, and there was like 70 of them. And the only thing we had left in the truck was gummy bears. And so I was putting gummy bears on a hook, and I would snag them from the top of the bridge and then toss the reel down to my 9-year-old, and he would bring them in. And so we would catch them.
It sounds like a nightmare, by the way.
It was
for some people.
Some people. For us, it was a dream come true. But that was the first time, like the second portion of it, since the road was closed, we were like, all right, let's jump on our bikes and go this. So like the next day, I'm like, man, what in the heck? This is a show of age. My ball joints, my hip joints hurt. My muscles were fine. My hip joints hurt because they weren't used to rotating like this. And so like I've done that every day, not every day since, but probably I've only skipped like 3 out of the last 20 days, getting a little bicycle action.
It's awesome.
So it has helped.
Yeah.
With the
and you know what else
flexors.
Biking and walking and running does is it's bilateral stimulation for your brain.
Yeah, the parasympathetic system.
Yes.
Yeah.
So really,
that's why I try and walk an hour, because I read that walking an hour is the equivalent of running whatever distance, I can't remember, but
yeah,
there's something that happens in that system when you walk an hour.
And for those of you that are listening or watching, walking in general is amazing. 20 minutes is also a great place to start. Because some people, an hour is a long time, right? But even just sneaking in a 20-minute walk is amazing. So it does, it regulates your nervous system too. Like everything just calms down.
So there's something to those office warriors that are putting their kids on at lunchtime.
Absolutely. For sure. So I actually teach indoor cycling. And after a class, a lot of times you see people just like, it's your endorphins are crazy. Like if you come in anxious or depressed or whatever, it can be lifted because it's just simply focusing on something else, and that bilateral stimulation in your mind and your body, it's all connected.
Right. That's the one thing. That's how I've been able to stop some of those little vices, is because I'm like, I want to do X right now. And so instead I'll be like, you know what? No, I'm going to go do some sit-ups. I'm going to go do whatever. And what's cool is like, it was very, what do you call it? The cosmetic or the show muscles or whatever. Like my initial workout things from when I remember playing sports in high school and stuff and parts of college were, push-ups, sit-ups, curls. But now I've started incorporating things too, because I've thought about, someone said something to me, my ex actually, it was like, why should women be the only ones to be held to a standard or think that you have to look good, and all these guys are just like, come check out my boat, and my beer gut. And so I was thinking about that, and one of the things that I didn't want to fall into as I got older was having farmer's butt.
What's farmer's butt? Like a flat butt and a big belly?
Yeah.
Or what? Okay.
Yeah. A lot of old white dudes have that.
A dad bod.
Yeah. And so I was like, well, okay, let's do it. And so like I do a lot of bicycle kicks now and squats, and I'm starting to incorporate that in my stuff because I'm starting to think more functionally. Like this isn't about what I'm doing or
What
how I
you're gonna
look.
look like, yeah.
Yeah, this is about like 15 years from now, I want to be able to come up the stairs with groceries in my hand and not be winded.
1,000%. Like play with your grandkids.
Yeah.
Right? Be thinking long term, and that's
Hopefully
really
that's a
what
long time out.
what's what I mean. You have a 20-year-old. Really, what it is about is taking care of yourself. And again, it's not just about you; it's about the whole family. Because even with my husband being sick, like cancer is an absolute. I mean, it's the devil.
Yeah.
And it's a ripple effect. And that's really any terminal or, serious disease, whatever it is, it affects the whole family. It goes on and on and on and on. And, some people are like, I don't care. I'm going to smoke or drink or whatever. I don't care if I get sick and die. And it's like, well, it's not just about you. It's about everyone else. And like, if you truly believe that your body and your mind, like you're a gift, which we all are gifts, right? We're brought on this earth to do something and contribute. So finding out what that is, like you got to be in tune with yourself, right? And be healthy, the healthiest you can be. And again, it comes back to control what you can control.
Right.
There are some things we cannot control, but we can control what we eat, what we do with our day, how we prioritize our day. And some people are like, my life is so just disheveled. And I'm like, let's just take a look from like a bird's eye view of what you're doing with your day. Mm-hmm. What are you doing in the morning? What are you eating?
It used to be that I could barely repeat what I did yesterday because I honestly didn't know.
Right.
And then when you live intentionally, your in-between parts are so much more meaningful. Like I got that down, but I also like what you said about as of taking care of yourself as it pertains to a relationship. I certainly took that for granted. I never thought about it until the fire was ignited from this last situation where I was like, man, gosh, that's really, you can be as caring and meaningful as you want, but if you're asking someone to enter into a long-term relationship or partnership with you and you're not optimizing yourself and your health, but you have that expectation for that other individual, is that fair? It's not fair, right?
And it's all about being a whole person yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Like you got to be whole yourself in order to be someone else's half and create that unity. Mm-hmm. Right? So, and also if you haven't healed those wounds, if you do have trauma in the past with most of us, which most of us do,
right.
If you haven't addressed it and haven't looked at it, unfortunately, you're going to bleed onto others, right? And you're going to bleed onto your significant other, and you're going to take things out on her or him, and you don't need to do it, but it just is what it is. So if you can acknowledge those wounds, whatever it may be, and work through them, and by work through them, I mean find a counselor or a therapist and talk through it.
Right.
There are things like EDMR. There's all sorts of stuff you can do. But
EDMR is what?
It's light therapy.
Okay.
Where you talk about something that gets you stressed or sad or some sort of emotion, and you watch a light go back and forth, and you're holding on to it's bilateral stimulation, BiTAPs, and you talk about whatever the situation was that was troubling to you.
Okay.
With your therapist.
I've heard about this.
Yeah.
Because my son and I had the unfortunate experience of being involved in the shooting at the Kirkwood Trunk or Treat. And so directly after that, a dear friend of mine from high school, actually, her mother does that. Mm. And she goes, hey, we want to give your son a free session. Amazing. Like come over here right afterwards. Yeah. So we went like the next day.
Amazing.
And he did that. And that seemed to be helpful for him because I've noticed there wasn't like I'm still like, if I hear a loud,
I'm sure.
I'm still like, what? But he's chill about it now. And he talks about it from time to time. But his biggest thing at the time was, we just got there. We didn't get to get our stuff. Yeah, I know. But
let's go to the grocery store and buy it back.
Yeah. So one of the big things I'm curious about, and not that it's been like a lighthearted conversation up to this point, but to kind of dive a little more into it. And again, just as much as you'd like to or not like to. Did you feel like at that time, or was there instances where you had to be the positive force for both of you? And how did you do that?
The whole time.
Yeah.
The whole time. Getting a terminal diagnosis, obviously I've never gotten one, but now being around it, I mean, it's your mind. I mean, there's nothing worse, right? Like, it sent him into a tailspin. And he was already a little bit of a hypochondriac around health stuff. And now to have one of the worst cancers, they're all bad, but one of the ones that is not very treatable, he went into a tailspin. And so I am a Christian, and I believe God had his hand in all of this. And so I felt from the very beginning that I felt a sense of, I don't want to say peace, but because that would sound really odd, but just kind of calm. Like I knew it was
Like maybe there's a purpose.
There absolutely was a purpose. I didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
But I knew he wasn't going to die. And people were trying to convince me, like, he's only going to live a couple months. And I'm like, nope. I'm like, we are going to get a miracle. But I'm kind of nerdy. Like, I believe in visualization. So I, like, posted up in his hospital room a picture of a clean pancreas and a clean basically his GI system.
Manifest.
Correct. Because I wanted him to look at some clean organs. And I posted up a bunch of stuff in his room, things that he loved doing, fishing, skiing, all the things. And he would even like give me a hard time because I'd walk in and I'd be like happy. I'm like, we got this. Like, let's go. What's today look like? And his family would even be like, here, we don't think you know how serious this is. And I'm like, no, I know how serious this is, but I'm not letting this win. Like, I'm not letting this diagnosis take my beautiful life and run it over the coals. Like, I'm just not doing that. Like, there is hope. Miracles do happen. So I spoke that language the entire time. My husband did get a miracle. So we had 5 months of standard of care treatment. So with pancreatic cancer, there are only 2 standard of care treatments, meaning approved by the FDA.
Okay.
So essentially, if you get that disease, you get protocol 1. You see how it works. Only 36% of patients actually respond or have any sort of reduction in their tumors to protocol 1. And then if that doesn't work, so for my husband, he had, 4 or 5 rounds, and he had a mixed response, meaning some of his cancer grew, some of it shrunk. And it was everywhere when we found it. So then he got to protocol 2, a little more aggressive, some side effects that were, unpleasant, way more unpleasant than the first. I mean, none of it's pleasant, especially with the GI cancer. And he was stable on that. Okay, well, you can only be stable for so long. The cancer essentially learns the chemotherapy.
Okay.
And overcomes, especially pancreatic
So it's adaptive because it's a cellular growth, right?
Yeah. Okay. So we did get a miracle. So after 5 months, well, let me back up. After 2 months, essentially, I remember sitting in his oncologist's room, and he was at Siteman, which anybody who has cancer here in St. Louis or surrounding areas or anywhere, Siteman is one of the top 3 cancer hospitals in the country.
Yeah.
Phenomenal research happening. Always get a second opinion, first and foremost, no matter where you are. But if you're anywhere close or you want another opinion of an extremely amazing cancer center, you've got to come to Siteman. So we were lucky to get one of the researchers in GI cancers as Kyle's oncologist. So after a few months of this treatment, he's basically saying like, yeah, this is what it is. I was like, there's got to be more. Like, what else is there?
Yeah.
Like, I refused to give up. I'm like, I have these babies. There's no way God put this man in my life. After 30 years, we have so much in common. We have such a beautiful life ahead of us. There's no way he's just going to take it away. Like, no way. So I asked him, oncologist, I'm like, what else is there? He's like, well, there isn't really much else, although there are some things in labs right now that are needing funding, and they're really promising treatments. And I'm like, okay, tell me a little more. Like, how do you get a drug
from this stage to this stage?
From lab to human?
Right.
And he's like, it's kind of a lot of loopholes. And I'm like, well, what's the first step? And he's like, funding. I'm like, how much funding? He's like, here, I'm not even going to tell you that. I'm like, no, tell me how much funding. How much is it to get a drug into a phase 1 trial? So phase 1 is about 50 to 60 patients.
Okay.
And he was like, about $3 million. So I looked at him and I'm like, I'm going to find you $3 million. He's like, you don't have to do that. I'm like, but I do.
Yeah, what else would I do?
What other options do I have? Let my husband die? Just succumb to this horrific disease? So I'm on social media, and I know his family did not like that I continue my blog, but it was my outlet. Okay,
Sure.
I'm a health and wellness coach. I'm into fitness. It was my outlet. So anyway, I went on there. Basically, I got a hold of the study. So the study that he had done in the lab with mice 4 different times, 14 to 15 mice. This treatment had never been in humans before. Okay, it was a standard of care chemotherapy that I mentioned earlier. The study drug, which is basically an inhibitor, it basically softens the coating around the cancer.
Okay.
It right now is used for like rheumatoid arthritis, some inflammatory diseases, in addition to immunotherapy. So my husband had the bad luck pancreatic cancer. Some pancreatic cancers have some common mutations, and when your cancer has a common mutation, oftentimes there are more targeted treatments.
Okay.
My husband did not have that. He had the bad luck kind. So Dr. Keon Lim out of Siteman, was the lead investigator, Kyle's oncologist. He was explaining this to me, and then I got a hold of the study. Mind you, I've been in medical and pharmaceutical sales, so I know how to read a study.
Okay.
So I'm reading through the study, and I'm looking at the companies involved. Well, I was in dermatology for 10 years, and then a lot of my dermatology colleagues moved over into oncology, which in my mind is actually a problem because there's more money in oncology drugs. Like, I don't think that oncology drugs should be a for-profit situation here.
Yeah, any drugs, but yeah.
Any drugs, but specifically cancer drugs, like for goodness sakes. Anyway, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying that, but it is what it is.
Well, that was what the Sunshine Act was for, right?
Correct.
So like prior to that, it was quotas. So it's really like, how can you trust a doctor's opinion if you know that their secretary's payroll is getting picked up by Pfizer if they sell 150 prescriptions a month?
Yeah, it's a mess, and I actually have stepped away from that business. And those of you that are still in it, my old colleagues, like Godspeed. I'm not shaming on anybody, but now knowing what I know now, I just have a way different viewpoint.
Yeah.
Right. So
well, America in general that's why you bring up these case studies is crazy because we are a world leader in all these areas and realms, but we are a reactive medical country, not a preventive medical country.
1,000%.
Because there's no money in prevention.
Because why do we have all these diseases? Because people aren't fueling their body right.
Right.
People are drinking and eating fast food and eating a bunch of things with a bunch of chemicals. Like we are making ourselves sick.
A lot of the food we eat is banned in other countries.
1,000%. It's true.
Including ketchup. Like you're talking about Canada. My son's girlfriend's from Canada, and we're talking about like the same ketchup, same brand, has 5 ingredients in Canada.
Yeah.
And has like 16 here.
Correct.
It's tomato paste.
It's a problem.
How many things do you need in it?
It's a problem.
Yeah.
So you do need to read your labels.
So you were reading this study.
Yes. So I'm reading the study, and I'm looking up the drug companies, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to throw it up on Instagram and see who of my people knows anybody at this company. So I threw it on my Instagram. Who knows anybody that works at this company? I get a message through Facebook Messenger, which I didn't even realize like my Instagram was going to my Facebook. Like I'm not super tech savvy, although I do have a blog. Like it looked like I may have an idea, but not really. So he sends me a message, and this is a guy that I worked with at one of the pharmaceutical companies and volunteered with for a long time. So like we knew each other decently well.
Well,
He says, I know I'm good friends with the CEO and president of that company that is making the study drug. So I call the CEO and president of that company, call his cell phone on a Saturday, share my whole story on his voicemail, calls me back, and we have a 30-minute conversation about what's going on. I'm like, my husband is 47 years old. We have 3 young children. I'm desperate. You guys have a drug that was used in a lab with our oncologist that worked on these mice, all 14 to 15 mice, all 4 times that the study was done. How do I get that drug into my husband? He's like, well, it's currently being used for rheumatoid arthritis. I'm like, easy. I'll get him a rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis. He's like, no, it doesn't really work that way. Again, I'm like, okay, how does it work?
right.
So he's like, have you ever heard of compassionate use medication? So what happened is one of our presidents agreed to allow, I won't name the name because I don't want to get political here, but allowed, if a drug is in a lab and looks really promising but doesn't have the funding yet, isn't in a phase 1 trial, and it could be a Hail Mary for somebody, the investigator can have their patient in it. So this was Kyle's Hail Mary. So he's like, let me go to my board and see if they'll pass that for compassionate use. So I'm like, all right, great. The CEO and president is kind of on board. He's going to go talk to his board on Monday. So I go Google his board, boop, boop, boop. And the list of board of directors comes up. Number 2 is somebody that I worked for.
Okay.
On his board. So then I call him. I'm like, hey, Bill, Kira Anderson, it used to be Nickram. Do you remember me? Cool. Let me tell you the story. Tell him the story of my husband, what's going on. And I'm like,
this has to be a pretty positive moment in all this too, because these are God shots, right? These are like, this is for a reason. This is for a reason. This is for a reason.
By the way, I say 1,000% because I'm like all in. It's not just 100%, like 1,000%. This is God working. These are, stars aligning, however you want to look at it. Like, what are the odds that I put one post up and get the president, CEO, the founder of this company that's making this drug?
Right.
It's a long shot. So then the second person on his board is someone I worked under. So I call Bill, tell him the story. He's like, we have a board meeting on Monday. I'm like, I know you do. I'm like, please, like, I am begging you. Like, do what you have to do. Like, fly me out there. I'll go talk to them, He's like, no, Kira, just, we got this. So by the end of that week, they approved the use of us using that inhibitor in addition to another company who had a similar inhibitor.
Okay.
So both of them gave Dr. Lim the approval to use it on Kyle. So then we have to go to the chemotherapy company and the immunotherapy company. Luckily, Merck, praise them, they allowed us to use their immunotherapy drug. And then I think our insurance covered the chemotherapy. Whatever, it doesn't really matter. But then we had to go to WashU and ask WashU if we can do a one-off study. So this was Dr. Lim had to write a study of 1, which is like a ton of work, to submit to WashU, to submit to the FDA. Okay, so these are like really like flaming fire hoops we have to go through.
Yeah. These aren't usually like things that individuals get done.
No question. Like, This is God working, 1,000%. So we go to WashU and they say no. And I'm like, excuse me? I'm like, who says no? Dr. Lim calls me. He's like, bad news, Kira. Like, they're not going to approve it. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, what? I'm like, who said no? He's like, I can't tell you who said no. Well, then I get online, of course, and I'm like, the tree of people that approve drugs at WashU, and I figure out who it is. So I call his office, and I'm like, I'd like a meeting with this doctor. I tell the whole staff the situation. I'm like, when are his clinic days? If he's not going to find time to see me, I'll go sit at his clinic. I'll find him in the parking lot. Like, I want this man to tell me no to my face. So I told Dr. Lim that I'm going to do that. I don't know what happened between then and approval, but Dr. Lim got this guy to overturn his response, to say yes. So then we had to submit to the FDA. I happen to know somebody that used to be on the board of the FDA. It got approved. So then we start treatment. 5 months in. My husband was very sick. I mean, it was not like a pretty battle by any means. Even when we got the treatment the miracle treatment. Yeah. Because his system was already so compromised. But at the end of the day, he started the treatment in March, and by December, his cancer was non-active.
Okay.
So the treatment worked.
Right.
He was super sick a lot of that time because chemotherapy makes you sick, and he already had so much done. But the long and the short of it is, it gave him a whole 12 months, an additional 12 months. And he actually, if this treatment had been funded when it initially was
diagnosed.
Well, when the study was initially brought to the FDA, if it was initially funded, my husband would still be here, and so would thousands and thousands of others. So this had already been submitted to the FDA 4 times, and they pushed back for things like needle size. Like, one needle size was put into this mice and another needle size in this mice. So
it's kind of like when the government's trying to build airplanes and they're like scrutinizing every little piece because that's where they get their money.
Correct. So
because probably one needle was made in some place that they had to deal with. Right.
And so here's the thing. The study, the numbers looked amazing.
I'm going to be on a list now, too.
Well, great. We're on it together. The numbers, the study looked amazing to all these other scientists, but there's a board at the FDA, at the NIH, that it has to be unanimous for them to pass a drug. Okay, so one guy said, nope, wrong needle size, or nope, mice. One mice was white, one mice was black, whatever.
Right.
Very minute things. So anyway, we got it for Kyle. His cancer went from crazy stage 4 pancreatic cancer to non-active in December. But he got colitis from immunotherapy, which can happen, which is inflammation of your gut, essentially. You have to use steroids to reduce the inflammation. What do steroids do? They also basically
Increase cellular growth, right?
I don't know about that, but I know that it put out the immunotherapy fire. So at this point, Kyle hadn't gotten chemo in like 4 months. The immunotherapy was attacking just the cancer, which is what you want.
Right.
So a lot of different types of cancer are using immunotherapy because it's working.
Okay.
Not for all, but essentially he was on steroids all of December so we could travel to see our family, in which we did, my family and his family. And when we came back in January, his numbers started to go up again. So the steroids, even though he was on a low-dose steroid to make sure that he didn't get colitis again, it put out the immunotherapy fire. So the rest of his life, the next 3 months, we battled treatment, the colitis, hospital stay. It was basically what's going to win, right? The cancer or whatever treatment we could get in him and keep him out of the
Fixing one
hospital.
issue was creating another.
1,000%. Yes. I need to stop saying that. Yes. So he ended up passing April 3rd of 2023 after 17 months of a crazy hard battle. I mean, he truly, I don't know how he did it. I mean, there's no way I would have been able to do what he did and gone through all that he went through. I mean, it was a battle.
But you did.
So, yeah, I did from a spouse caregiver standpoint, but I'm saying, I mean, he was a hero, basically, like, because this had never been in any human in the world. And he was like, yeah, I guess let's try it.
Right.
So now I actually started a fund right after he got the treatment because I thought we were going to have to raise $3 million.
Yes.
So I started a fund and we ended up getting compassionate use, but I'm still trying to raise that money because for a multitude of reasons, but there are just so many people being diagnosed with GI cancers. Mm-hmm. It's increasing and it's younger people too. One of my best friends actually had stage 3 colorectal cancer. She beat it a year prior to Kyle getting sick. 31 years old, healthy, beautiful, amazing human. You would never guess. Freaking stage 3 colorectal cancer. She beat it in 12 rounds of chemo. My point is GI cancers are on the rise, okay? Yeah. So my goal is $3 million to be able to give Dr. Lim $3 million to fund a phase 1 study.
Okay.
I've raised over $1 million so far, so I have about $2 million to go.
Awesome.
But I also want to raise awareness about the fact that GI cancers are on the rise and they're hitting patients younger and younger.
Right.
And if cancer research, if it was more of a priority for everybody.
Well, and it sounds like in isolation too, because I hear a lot of things like that. I don't want to downplay any specific organizations, but what I do for a living is help organizations raise money. It's a very broad brush. When you said that about $3 million puts this phase into the next phase, if that was specified and there was organizations like what you're creating that have that goal in mind for specifics, I feel like maybe some of the specialty organizations that only pay out 40% of what they raise would be a lot further along, right? Like there's a lot of run walks that happen around this country for different types of cancer, in particular breast cancer, which is like, again, not to downplay it at all, but one of the least lethal forms at this point because there's been so much research into it.
And there's been a ton of money and attention on breast cancer,
right,
which is amazing, right? Because it affects so many people. But we need that same focus on all cancers, right? And I from my viewpoint, GI cancers is I mean, I am laser focused.
I just feel like that, like I said, like that one organization, if they just divided up like quarterly what their things were, we're talking about moving things along in that next phase 4 times a year pretty easily.
Right. Because $3 million at the end of the day is not that much money. No. And here's an interesting fact. So the FDA is the largest funder of cancer research, and it's less than 1% of their budget. It goes to cancer research.
It's crazy.
It's a problem.
It is a problem.
It's a big problem.
Where can people connect with you to help you get this done?
I love that question. So I have an Instagram, The Essentials by Kira.
Okay.
I also have a website, but Instagram, I check that all the time. I get the, dings all the time, but send me a message. There's a link. I'm currently involved with Pedal the Cause. Are you familiar?
Yeah.
Speaking of biking.
Yeah.
Last year we raised $300,000 in just a few months because I didn't sign on with them until the beginning of the fall. Team Kyle. So this year, our goal is $700,000. So you can also go on the Pedal the Cause page and find Team Kyle or me, Kira Anderson, and donate. Siteman, at the leading cancer studies at Siteman, one of which is the GI team. So
Awesome.
yeah, and again, send me a message. We can chat. I mean, I have a fund that, of course, I want funded as well. But at the end of the day, we all we need to work together. The goal is to cure cancer, right?
Right.
Or at least get it to a point where it's livable. It's not such a lethal diagnosis.
And it should be a collaborative effort because there shouldn't be any benefits in it for the individuals in certain areas just to beat their chest and say, I did this.
No. Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you, Kira, so much for sharing that story and being vulnerable and talking through some of the trials and tribulations. And I'm sure we could talk for many more hours about the same thing, but I want to make sure that all of the links to what you're saying are down below and people can find those. And just thank you again for your time.
Yeah, thank you again for having me.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.